Istanbul, the former capital, is the historic Turkey you may well have expected. A fabulous city of mosques and palaces. 500 years ago, Mehmet II conquered Istanbul from its Byzantine rule.
Istanbul, the city of the seven hills. When you say Istanbul, you typically think of mosques, churches, squares, palaces, castles, and so on. However, in this film we will shine a light on an element that made this city unique in many ways. Fountains. And especially the imperial fountains that were built in the Tulip era of the Ottoman Empire. But what is the Tulip era? The Tulip era is a notable period in Istanbul's history, witnessed the construction of several imperial fountains. Spanning from the early to mid-18th century, during the reigns of Sultan Ahmed III and Mahmud I, the Tulip era was characterized by a blossoming interest in arts, particularly horticulture. During this era, Istanbul experienced remarkable changes in its architecture and urban design, and the construction of numerous imperial fountains stands out as a prominent feature.
Well, I mean, the fountains are really quite special because they are, on the one hand, a practical necessity, and the 18th century is, in fact, a period in which a whole new system was constructed, known as Taksim. One of the reasons for doing this was the fact that Ahmed III and later sultans spent a good deal of time on the Bosphorus, and Beşiktaş did not have a proper water supply. So the new system was meant to supply the palace, but it also supplied the Galata, which was at that time a thriving commercial center. So this, the utilitarian part is definitely part of the story.
These fountains served a dual purpose of functionality and ornamentation. Adorned with intricate tile work, calligraphy, and other decorative elements, they graced the city's public spaces, including mosques and squares. The imperial fountains held immense importance as public gathering spaces, symbols of royal patronage, providers of clean water, and contributors to the city's architectural renaissance and cultural legacy.
The Çeşme has multiple functions. And it depends on whose point of view you adopt. In the 18th or 19th centuries, transportation within the city was on the backs of pack animals, horses and donkeys. So therefore, a Çeşme normally would have water reservoirs at the bottom, and that's where the horse drivers and donkey drivers could water their animals. And then you have taps, water taps, where people got their water from.
Some of the major imperial fountains that were constructed are the Tophané Fountain, Sultan Ahmed III Fountain in Topkapi, and the other Sultan Ahmed Fountain in Üsküdar. By the way, more fountains were meant to be featured in the film, such as Saliha Sultan Fountain and Ali Pasha Fountain, but anyways, beyond their architectural significance, the imperial fountains wove themselves into the social fabric of Ottoman society.
Most 16th century çeşmes that we know of were not very elaborate, but in the 18th century, they become a site where the donor can assert him, or in some cases even herself.
During this era, a cultural shift occurred, celebrating the allure of tulips, the emergence of coffee houses, and the influence of Ottoman poetry.
So the elaborate masonry block, decorated with inscriptions and decorated with plants often in relief, all that's a novelty of the 18th century. A Meydan Çeşmesi is a block of masonry, and the area where the water has to come out is relatively small. So you have plenty of open space. And people, donors, decorated that with inscriptions. In the case of the Sultan Ahmed Mosque, there was poetry that supposedly the Sultan had composed in person. So therefore, using inscriptions as a decorative element was common.
The fountains became gathering places near bustling coffee houses, where poets, artists, and the public convened. They echoed the poetic expressions of the era, embodying nature, love, and beauty through their intricate designs and the graceful fusion of water and architecture.
And the interesting part about 18th century inscriptions is that they're usually in Turkish. The older ones were typically in Arabic, and they were usually much more succinct and standardized. On the other hand, in the 18th century, people went over to Turkish, and a lot of the time the inscriptions are more easily legible. They use an elegant script, and it's not in any way difficult of access. And since it is in Turkish, they are much more inclined to cite poetry and to, in general, elaborate on the reasons why so-and-so financed such and such a çeşme.
These fountains symbolize a bygone era where art, nature, and social connections converged harmoniously. The significance of the fountains lies in their combination of architectural styles and visual elements, including calligraphy, poems, colors, and geometric shapes.
The engravings are to be trusted. Men also, especially older men, like to sit there and smoke a pipe and maybe drink coffee and gossip. And so therefore, the çeşmes are places where a sizable number of people will congregate. They are also, at least the elaborate ones, a place that people admire as a work of art.
Istanbul, a city of constant progress and innovation, continues to shine as a beacon of culture and heritage. The imperial fountains of the Tulip era stand as enduring testaments to the city's rich history. They inspire and captivate, serving as reminders of the artistry and ingenuity of past generations. As Istanbul continues to evolve, the imperial fountains remain guardians of the past, preserving the stories of a bygone era for generations to come.